and that's too late to get to the NHL apparently. But he started out on a C team, and the coaches were nice guys, but they didn't recognize that they had to teach fundamental skills. So I volunteered, sort of like you were volunteering, Wally, to help out, and I did occasionally, but I had to take it outside of the team format, and I started a power skating program, which I ran for about 6 or 7 years. But that was the part of it. When he got to Pee Wees, I continued to be the head coach, but I was also coaching high school at the same time. And so I got 3 or 4 really good assistant coaches, and we just kind of laid out a plan. It was interesting. I was thinking about this because I probably will end up trying to mentor or run the Squirt program, which is U10 boys in our local program this winter. And the challenge of getting the quote unquote coaches on the same page to run, to do the things that we're talking about. The issue is, do you just lay out the program and say, this is what we're going to do, or not? And if it's not, they're going to do what they want to do, in my opinion. I worked with a lot of programs, a lot of teams, and I know I digressed a little bit from coaching my own kid. I'll go back to that. I helped out his Bantam team that won the state tournament, but I was sort of on the side. The coach was a really good guy, and we would talk, and I would go on the ice occasionally with him, but that was it. But I think it's a big problem when coaches of their own kids, they're using the team to feature their kids, and give them preferential treatment and ice time. And I've seen this all the way up to the college level. And Woog did it, and Lucia did it, and so on and so forth. And my son went to a different high school than the one I was coaching in, but we were in the same league. So my wife would sit in the stands on the red line and cheer for our son. And I always told him before the game, I said, if your team wins, I hope you score the winning goal. So, people would say to me, why doesn't your son go to this school? When you're coaching at, and I said, well, because you only coach, coaching contract's a year. If I bring him here and and then I'm not coaching anymore, then what? So no. And the other school he was at academically at that time was better, and they had a great lacrosse program, and my son was a really good lacrosse player also in the school I was coaching at. Hadn't gotten to lacrosse yet. So, but if you coach your own kid, if you don't play him, your son or daughter is mad at you, and your wife or husband, depending on how this is working, are mad at you. And if you overplay them, the other parents are mad at you. So it's a really fine balance. If your own child is the best player on the team, it's also difficult, I think, because you're going to tend to overplay them. And if they're the worst player in the team, everybody thinks they're there because you're the coach. And it's probably right. So that's my piece on it. Turn your mic on, Wally.
Parent coaches, over the years, the guys that I've known that could do a good job, and I would recommend coach teams, were the opposite. They were knowledgeable, and they were harder on their own kids than they were on anybody else. And that's what I'm frightened about. I think I agree with you. If you're a parent and you're coaching and giving your child an advantage, it's noticeable. And I think that the bottom line is it comes down to balancing the ice time so everybody has got a role and accept it, and they don't even notice what you're doing. It's so subtle when you do load up a little bit here and there or make decisions that are correct. putting kids out that have done something well, not just the best player, but hell, I wanted to talk to Tim. Tim, I've been offered a formal role with the Hockey Association here, and having been through the process of raising a family, coaching my family members, and then coaching in numerous sports, I'm curious about your background, Tim, your family, coaching your own kids, and then how you got to be where you are today and still contributing.
Yeah, so I've been involved off and on with coaching my grandson. He is a Bantam minor this year, and I'm not on the coaching staff for his Bantam team. He's skating with a new organization this year, and I reached out to the hockey director, and to offer myself as a resource to the entire organization, not necessarily as a in a coaching role for his team. I'd rather work with the organization as a whole. But he does play for me on the middle school team that I coach. I've always, as far as how I got to where I am now in regards to hockey and coaching, growing up, I did not play organized hockey. I learned to skate at an early age and played pond hockey, with the neighborhood kids occasionally. I've always been a winter sports enthusiast. Used to be a downhill ski instructor. But at some point, probably 12 years ago or so, I told my wife, I'd like to start skating again, because I probably didn't have a pair of skates on my feet from the time. I can remember skating a little bit when I was in college, just recreationally, and a handful of times when our kids were young. But probably from the time I was 20, in my mid to late 20s, until I was almost 50, I didn't have a pair of skates on my feet, and I just told my wife, you know what, I'd like to start skating, and I think I'd like to, play hockey. And so I got a pair of skates for Christmas that year, and I've enjoyed it ever since. When my grandson was just a few years old, I thought, this would be great if I could learn more about the sport, and I've always enjoyed teaching. So I got a little bit tired of the downhill ski instructing. So I made the switch to start coaching. It was kind of interesting. I went to my local rink and talked to the hockey director and said, and he knew who I was from me skating there mentally. And I said, at that point, I either told him I wanted to get my level 1, or I already had it. I couldn't remember. And I said, I'd like to help, just on a team. And he said, we don't need any help. That took me back a little bit. So we have a number of rinks close by. So I mentioned the same thing to a hockey director at another rink. And he says, help. He said, heck yeah, we can use your help. He said, I've never heard such a thing as being told a hockey director saying he doesn't need help. So he put me on a team as an assistant for, it was you in Canada, you guys would call it a house league, but we call it limited travel, where it was, like one practice a week, maybe one game, maybe 2 on the weekends. It wasn't the full rep hockey experience, but we have some rinks so close, they would play other rinks in a close area. So just a little bit more than the house, but not much. And so I started doing that, and I really liked it. And I don't know, I think I did that. I think it was the first year I was doing that. The hockey director came to me and said, well, we had the head coach for the Pee Wee B team. get suspended for the rest of the year. I need a head coach. And I thought to myself, well, this isn't quite what I signed up for. But I said, well, if you need the help, I said I'll step in, and I did, and I've been head coach, assistant coach, pretty much ever since then. I think this is my 12th or 13th year of coaching, and when I look back at how little I knew, it's a little scary, but obviously one of the reasons I'm involved in this group is I consider myself a lifelong learner. So I evaluate the mistakes that I make and try not to make the same mistake twice and move forward. So anyway, so I started to get some coaching experience under my belt, and I taught my grandson how to skate when he was 4. Took him to the rink, where he could play around on stick and puck and shoot pucks, do what he wanted to do. I have pictures of him where he's, I don't know, just a 4-year-old or 5. But he started skating when he was 4, and I can remember him being on the ice when he was 4 or 5, out there with guys, 6 feet tall. He didn't care, but so it just was kind of a thing that we could bond over, and so he's a late birthday. He's a November birthday, and the local rink had a 3-on-3 spring league. So when he was 5, he that was his first organized hockey experience. And I had him on the bench as part of the 3-on-3 team. And I can remember the first goal he scored. I can picture it like it was yesterday. He was so excited, and the goal was at the other end of the rink by the other bench, and he was so excited he high-fived everybody on the other team after he scored. But so then that fall he started here in the States what we would call Adam, which is 6U here in the States. So and now this is his first year of Bantam Minor. So he's played the whole time. He's a multi-sport athlete. Typically puts the skates away in April. Does one hockey camp in the summer. He plays spring lacrosse. So he's got a hockey camp late in June. He'll probably do another, and he travels a little bit for that one.
Yeah, Jim, I want to interrupt you because
yeah,
are you doing what you do because you have a grandson?
And that was what got me started, but I have coached teams that he was not on. I enjoy going to the rink. I enjoy working with. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy working with groups of young people. So I don't do it because of him, but to be fair, that was one of the reasons that I'd have to be fair. I'd have to say when I started the idea of coaching, I had him. He was probably only 2 or 3 at the time, but it had him in the back of my mind. But that's not why I do it today. Am I answering your question?
Yeah. When before you came on, I wanted to get the issue going. We've all been through the experience of raising our families, playing our sport ourselves. Everybody on here played hockey, probably coached their family kids growing up if they had children, and we're totally knowledgeable, invested in the game, and formally educated to officially mentor or could offer help. And my question that I'm asking the group here, and I'm going to ask some of the other people, eventually I'm going to get to Tom. He isn't aware of what's transpired yesterday. Jordan is. I was offered a position, girls, a formal position now. It's not a volunteer thing anymore, and that's what scares me, because expectations go up when, oh boy, we've got this person hired to mentor. and trying to define what I'm going to do to make the experience positive for everyone. So that's what I wanted to get into. And Tim, if you were attempting early on to help out, and you haven't played, so it doesn't surprise me that people would be standoffish. So I'm just curious. You're coming on the call. You're working with a team. Are you doing this? Like, are you retired? Are you still working? Or how are you managing your time? And then we'll go after this. We'll go to the other people here because I really want advice on my situation from the others. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah. I'm probably 2 years away from retirement. I'm fully employed. I work from home, and so I have a very flexible schedule. And that's what affords me the time to be involved in youth hockey at the level I'm involved in.
Okay. Well, Jordan, I talked to you yesterday about what's transpired, and Tom is moving up to the U15 team, and I've been offered a position to mentor the U13 team. Now, mentor may not be the right word. I have an idea what that is and what it'll involve. It's pretty much what I did last year, and I discovered that over the years, the only thing I can really offer something outside of the hockey box is providing a ethical background to the association that everybody is going to get on the same page for what they're doing. And I'm really afraid of it because I don't regard myself as a mentor to Tom and Jordan because I've worked with them for so many years. But I'm a little reluctant to take on this responsibility because Peter Whitney mentioned to me, well, what is mentorship? And who's mentored you? And that's one of the questions I've got for the people here. How did you feel as a mentor, whether it was in your area of employment or hockey? How would you regard yourself as being a mentor for somebody? And at the same tone, who was your mentor in whatever field you're in, whether it's education, business, or coaching? So, Jordan, can you speak to that?
Yeah, Wally. The quick answer for hockey is you're my mentor. So, or one of them. In education, it's an interesting one that we've started formalized mentorship programs in some school settings, and I never find that the formal mentorship pieces bear as much fruit as those that are informal, in which people find a person that they trust and a person that they feel that they mesh well with and create a good relationship with. But there are all sorts of different mentorship opportunities. I think that the word mentorship gets thrown around quite a bit in the business world right now, to the point where they've got a new thing that they're calling reverse mentorship, where the leaders are out there supposedly looking for canvassing their young people and trying to figure out how to work with Gen X and Gen Z and millennials and everybody that way too. So, but what I see it as is it comes down to teaching and coaching, Wally. And it's just the same as in a classroom. Not every child will need the exact same amount of your attention as a classroom teacher in these exact same things. So I understand what you're saying with the term mentorship, and does Tom need you as a mentor in the same way that another coach might? No. But does Tom need a sounding board, a person that he trusts, a person that he can go to at times? Absolutely. I'm thinking that Tom would ask, he probably has those conversations with you on the phone the same way that I do. And if I look at the way that yours and my mentor-mentee relationship has changed over the years, it is that sounding board, and I do call you often and those pieces, and it's less about X's and O's and still about the science of coaching and or the art of coaching rather than the science of coaching and those sorts of things. So I think, yes, Wally, you bring a lot of value to an organization in this role, and I think that this role would be a good one to have in all hockey organizations, and in trying to get everybody on the same page ethically. And you won't get everybody, but at least be able to draw a line or get people to have that conversation of what are the things that we value. And I think back to the Australian general that was going through a scandal in the Australian military to do with relations that the way that female officers were being treated. And he talked about the standard at which you're willing to walk past is the standard you accept. So in all organizations, you have to set a standard. And if you
Hold on a
don't,
second.
then the one that you're
Just a
willing
minute.
to walk past is the one you're willing to accept. So with this one, I think that helping to work with coaches and parents and the entire organization, Wally, will be a valuable one.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Jordan. Before I go to Hal and Peter who have their hands up, what I've learned over the years, I've always thought, boy, I've got all this wealth of hockey knowledge. I want to give it to you. I want to give it to you. And what I've learned this past year is that that doesn't happen because everybody is sort of on their own trajectory in terms of hockey, and they're experiencing the hockey. But this year, through Tom's request, he asked me to do the mission statement exercise with the parents because he was having difficulty. So to me, he sought out help, and this is the only time I think, okay, this idea worked. And I believe that the work I'm going to do with parents is going to help the coaches of those teams that might lead to building enough trust if they want help to provide it. But that's very secondary, distant, not even in my mind. I'm just worried about getting on the same page about how they're going to treat their young people and how they're going to develop them first. And so I've learned that this year. Now, Hal, you had your hand up, and we are talking mentorship, so I'm sure you've been there, done that, and you're still doing it and going to be moving like I am to a similar formal role.
Yeah, well, I appreciate what Jordan had to say about mentorship because I've been involved as a mentor in the corporate world, and they don't work very well because the younger people don't follow through. You know, they'll make the first call, they'll schedule it, and then it's like pushing on a string kind of to get them to come back. And then in the corporate world, they match people poorly, with different job titles, and it just doesn't seem to work very well. But they brag about their mentorship program. In the hockey world, when I was younger, I spent a lot of time getting to know the coaches at the Division I schools in Minnesota, and made a point of reaching out to them and having breakfast with them or lunch with them and just talk hockey. And ironically, some of the kids I was coaching eventually ended up playing for them. And then I had Don Lucia's, when he coached the Gophers, I had his older boy played for me for 2 years in Bantam hockey. So I got to know him pretty well. As the years go by, from a mentorship role, as a head coach, I've always seen my job is to help develop my assistant coaches to become really good head coaches, if that was something they wanted to do. And a number of them have gone on to do that. and either head coaches or gone on to be assistant coaches in college. And so we still connect. My current, I don't know if I'd call him a mentor, but when I have questions, I call Jim Johnson, who's now a player development for the Anaheim Ducks. But we've coached together. Our kids have played together up in camps, up at the up on the junior prep camp up in on Vancouver Island, and he and I were both coaching there. But I just talked to him 2 days ago about trying to figure out how to help the Trail Smoke Eaters recruit better players. And we have these really great conversations, and he's from here, so he understands what's going on here. We talk about my team, we talk about his team. His team did about as well this year as my team did. And he's at the top level, and I'm thrashing around at the bottom level. But I think, Wally, for your situation, it's kind of how the association presents it, and how they tell people why you're there, and how, I don't think you can force people to participate, but you got to find a way to maybe have an introductory meeting or several, and just get to know people, because this is a people-to-people business, and it can't be a top-down. You got to do it this way. You got to do it that way. Ironically, a week from tomorrow, I'm going to have a conversation with a guy in our program about doing almost exactly the same thing that you're going to do. But I also want to coach a team, so we'll see what happens. I mean, hockey coaches they're pretty stubborn in their way of doing things. I shouldn't say just hockey coaches. I think a lot of leaders are very set in their ways, and it's hard to convince them that there's a better way. And personally, for me, I've been demonstrating it with the teams I coach. And if that's what I end up doing this year and just coaching one more team, I'll help another 18 kids and their families and demonstrate it all over again. And eventually maybe somebody will say, geez, we'd like a little of that too. So anyways, guys, I got a 10:45 meeting at my real office. It is 20 minutes away. So I'm going to have to jump off. I will look forward to the video on this, though, Wally. That's great, and congratulations. I hope you can find a way to do this, because I had lunch with a woman yesterday who used to work with PCA, Positive Coach, and she actually hired me to be a trainer. And I told her I might not coach anymore. She said, no, you can't quit. There's too many kids that need you. Wally, there's too many kids that need you. Your mic's off.
I don't coach anymore, so I don't directly affect kids, but I'm trying to influence coaches to affect their kids in a positive way. And I think it's a different role, and I really enjoy it. And I feel more comfortable with the emotional intelligence side of coaching, the ethical side of coaching, and the management of people. And really, the essence is trust and respect, creating an environment with the association that is going to filter through every team at every level and affect the parents and the players, and more importantly, the administration, to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. So thanks very much, Hal, and
Yep.
get to
We'll
work.
see you guys next week.
Okay, and I'm going to ask Peter to come in now. And before you leave, Hal, the thing that I'm worried about is getting paid to do something which I think might destroy the effectiveness of what I'm doing. So, Peter Whitney is out hiking.
Yeah,
There you are.
I'm at the beach. Yeah. So it's funny. There must be something at the beach. So use the phrase. Must be something in the water, so to speak, because along with you and Hal, I think I might have mentioned this to you a little bit. I was also offered a similar type of position. And my first question, Wally, would be so I'm not here. There's a president, vice president, and then there's board members. So what I first did when I was trying to put this thing together, I'm still trying to decide if I'm going to do it or not. I guess similar to you, is what are you looking for and what are your issues? Because they say, well, we really want someone with your experience. That really doesn't, that's not really helpful. That's like just telling a player they have to work hard to get in the lineup without giving them anything tangible. So for me, from watching the organization and speaking with the board, the president, communication for them is a key issue. So my role is going to be the communication with parents and with the coaches. And I'm honestly really excited about doing your mission statement exercise with both groups. But for you, I mean, I would really try to find tell me exactly what tangible, what are you looking for? If you can put it in bullet points for me, that's great, because now I can see A, B, C, what areas are important to you. Because again, like you said, you're getting paid, you're working for that organization. So they must have something in their mind, I'm guessing, that they either need supported and or corrected. So I would have that type of conversation with them and find out exactly what those points are and share with them your ideas. And if everybody's smiling, and then it's going to be a good experience.
Well, Peter, it's interesting because last season is the only time I felt I really accomplished something with the mission statement exercise with Tom's team. I got into the trenches with his parents because I did the exercise for them, just the parents. And so, like you, my plan is to do the exercise with the coaches. Ideally, all three coaching staffs, because I know at once for the U13 team and the U15 teams. And the reason for that is the people I worked with last year, like Tom's moving to U15, he knows what the exercise is, the impact it had, and he supports its value. And having a coach in the group of coaches that are trying to do it the right way, but sometimes pressured by their parents to not do it the right way. And it's not all parents, it's a chosen few or an administrative few who have gotten into the leadership positions in the board that allow them to coach in a non-developmental way, in a way that ignores the process. So that's sort of my intention, Peter, and I think you're on the right track. And I don't know. The thing that worries me most, Peter, is being paid for it. And I'll take it. I like to get gas money and that kind of thing, but I just want to make an impact. And the Sharks really, to me, are the offshoot of mentorship, in that we talk to each other. Well, we're sharing thoughts with each other. We're learning and listening from each other. So to me, everybody wants to do good. They really do. They don't come in there to screw up things. You can win in a good way, and you can win in a way that isn't as professional as you think it is. And separating the business of sport with the sport of sport and the minor hockey development. And when I say minor hockey, I'm talking junior and down. I don't talk college. I don't talk minor professional or major junior where they moved away from home and they're trying to get drafted. But everything up to that point, is affected by the highest level and the model of what they do to get success. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I have one other person on here, Rick Puttock, and then Jordan, I'm going to ask you to sort of synthesize things that you've heard, because you seem to do that well, being an administrator and listening well. But Rick, you've been there, done that. You coached your son growing up in the same community. You're now back mentoring that community. We worked with it for 4 years together, using the P3 program from out in Cochrane. But now you are where you are. So can you talk a bit about your background, Rick, and to where you've gotten to a point now that you're mentoring?
Well, yeah, I've worked with a local rural association for the benefit of the others. It's not a big city organization. The last 2 years, it's been as a formal mentor, paid position. The first year was quite light in terms of participation and acceptance. Last year, with 20 teams, I was able to connect with 65% or 13 of the teams on a regular basis, to varying degrees. One team I spent a considerable amount of time with, and I'm just in the throes. We're just getting together to do a year-end roundup, wrap up, and try to determine what they want to do next year. And they're coming to me. I'm taking that as a positive that they're willing to pursue this further. It's been a growing process. It's not something you can just jump into and say, here I am, follow me, do what I say. I've found that you've got to edge your way in and earn the trust and the respect. Notwithstanding the respect that I have in the community for what coaching I've done over the years, the younger fellas, I guess rightfully so, feel they've got it figured out, and they should be allowed to follow their path unimpeded, as long as it's not doing any real serious harm to anyone. And I've just learned to ease my way into those situations and make myself somewhat useful with the hope that they will see that maybe something further can be taken from it. And as further background, when I started coaching, I wasn't overly enthused about anybody sticking their nose in my business and just jumping in and telling me I should do things this way or the other. I was good at seeking out other people that I respected and felt that they had something to offer if I had a situation that I wasn't sure how to deal with. So I understand how it is from the other side. But as far as the situation you're entertaining, Wally, I've found it quite rewarding. You're going to get some pushback. You're going to get, as I did this year, some people saying, I just don't have to listen to you. And that's fine. You have that opinion. I'm not going to force that on you. But it didn't deter me from doing what I was doing. It was part of what, in that situation, part of what the mentoring is for me, is that you've got to get a coaching staff that's on page with each other. And in that situation, in my opinion, they weren't on side with each other, never mind an interloper coming from the outside to try and influence things. So it's a challenge, but it's no different than trying to get 18 or 20 players to do what you want. You never accomplish 100% results with that either, in my experience. You get varying degrees of acceptance and follow through. The more successful you are in that area, the more successful your teams seem to function.
Thanks very much, Rick. I really appreciate that. Jordan, you've heard us talk. I've got some thoughts in my mind, but I'd sure like you to sort of throw out your thoughts, because you've worked in this association, you worked in another one previously, and in all organizations, leadership changes. None of us have. We still coach. Tim's still coaching. And when leadership comes in, they tend to dictate the way things be based on the pressure they are facing, or based on their own philosophy of why they're doing what they're doing. So that's my big concern is leadership. And fortunately, in girls hockey Calgary, there's a generation of leaders, parents that are becoming leaders and on the board that are familiar with us. So I have the trust and respect, and Jordan and Tom are gaining that trust and respect because they do things, I believe, in a way that's we want to model. So, Jordan, go ahead.
Well, Wally, I think that what it comes down to is in saying what Rick was just mentioning, it's about support and supporting those that uh, need support and supporting the others in ways that in which they will be receptive to it. When it comes to boards and that, you're right that they come and go, and I know that if you talk to anyone that's coached, there are times where they felt supported by their board or governing body, and there's times where they don't. And I think that where they feel like they've had the most success is when they've been supported. And I think that the role that this mentor position will play is that of support, and just the same way as coaches have influence over their players, this role will have influence over coaches. And as you said, Wally, it could be a generation of coaches, because there's a lot of young coaches out there that they might not know what they don't know yet, and they don't know that they need your support quite yet, and they may come to that realization later on that, oh, that what they were talking about was more important than the X's and O's piece that I was focused in on. And so there's that piece, and I look at it. Of course, I've got to look at it from the lens in which I work professionally in education. That a classroom teacher has the most impact on students. An administrator has impact on classroom teachers by supporting them and enabling them to do their best. And then one step removed is those at our education centers, and then the board of trustees. So yeah, the people on the board of trustees get themselves elected to those positions because they want to have impact. But ultimately, who has the most impact on a daily basis is the person that's right in front of those kids. So that's the same with coaching and in minor hockey. Uh, some parents get themselves on the board, as you know, to select coaches and hope to direct things that way. Others get on it for reasons to support their own kid in having a good experience, and hopefully, I think that that's the direction that our board has been going over the last while, and hopefully that's helping to solidify ethical coaching and ethical use of players and ice time and all of those things. And I think that that's what's kept some coaches continuing to coach. So whether you take this on as a formal position or not, Wally, you know your phone's going to ring from me, as well as probably Tom from time to time, and some of the others as well. So it's I think it's a great support opportunity and a way of setting a tone that for an organization that in a way that supports players and coaches and families in being both better hockey players and better humans. And that should be our goal, isn't it? To create better hockey players, but more importantly, to create better humans.
Yeah. You know, Jordan, it's interesting. Alan Andrews was in town, and I took him up to a farmer's market, and we had lunch, and we talked hockey. And on the way, I put in a CD by Bruce Beaton on great coaches from the past and knowing how they communicated with people to create trust and respect, and their focus. And these are the great ones. Whether it was, John Wooden or the Duke basketball coach or the 35-year champion Sutton of female basketball, he talked about all of them and how they focused on the life skills that they were learning through playing a sport in their environments. And that that's really the essence of what I'm trying to do, is make people realize that we're playing that, doing this activity because we want to influence those children, those students, those young players, some of which are going to be our athletes that are going to go on to have the life skills to cope and make better the environment they're going to move into. So it's that simple, is just don't worry about the outcomes first, and understand the process. So hopefully we can experiment with that this year and get it off the ground. The bottom line is going to be is that everybody, yourself included, Jordan, Tom, Tim, as you coach, and I believe Helter said it right, you're setting an example of the way things need to be done. And we would like to make that a lasting example, a legacy example. And so that as you coach the way you coach and influence those kids the way you do, and the influence on them is what matters. And the influence you have on your teachers that have a greater impact on the students is what, we're trying to do here. So it's been a dilemma for so many years that possibly we can get something off the ground that gains the attention of others to sort of grow the integrity of the sport and the value of what it can do for everyone. So thanks very much, Jordan. And I don't know if anybody has anything else to add on the topic, but I know I've got ideas, and I'm going to pick your brains, Jordan and Tom, about what to do moving forward, because Jordan, as an administrator, you see the big picture. You understand the foibles of leadership above you and what you're doing inside, and you're being invited to conferences to speak in education across the country. So you're doing that. You're being a mentor as you do it, as you coach, and that. So when you try to define mentorship, it's just doing what you do to accomplish a good thing, and I think that's what we're all trying to do. So, Rick, anything to add? Anything in the back of your mind where, I'm thinking pretty globally here, and you're working in Strathmore, but the situations of Strathmore is the same anywhere. Toronto, you name it.
I would concur with that 100%. Any observation I've had that's not involved in the community I work directly with, there's a lot of similarities out there. There's just a lot of people out there, Wally. We're all pretty much the same when you draw the circle around everybody.
Yeah. Well, it seems that leadership gurus are emerging everywhere with all kinds of activities to bring people together or make people better leaders. So I think that's sort of what we're doing. It's a nonstop thing. So thanks very much, Jordan, for stepping on. Good luck with your school day here. So, okay. Tim, are you following the NHL at all? Because up here, Tom has Flames tickets, and I was going to talk a little bit about the game last night, the dilemma the Flames are facing, and they had two rookies that I thought were the best two players on the team last night. But Tim, what about you and the influence of the NHL on you? Are you hooked on it and following it? And does it affect the people in your community that as much as it does here?
I follow it to a certain degree. I'm a loyal Philadelphia Flyers fan, so that has its own connotations, I guess. I don't get to watch that many of the West Coast games just because of the time difference. But the one thing I was going to mention was something that came to mind as you were talking earlier, Wally. I find it very interesting that head coach John Tortorella has actually removed himself from the bench for several games this year, and sat up in the press box. And on local social media, that has just generated like a firestorm of mostly negative comments. But I heard an interview with John, and his sole reason for doing that was to empower his assistant coaches, Rocky Thompson, Brad Shaw, and there's one other one who I don't remember their name. So and not only is he John Tortorella helping to develop his players, he's also helping to develop his coaches. And as a coach, I think that's somewhat unique for a coach in his position. And anyway, so that's some of my limited thoughts on the NHL.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Tortorella example, because I want to bring up a story that, I've shared this with a number of people, and it happened with Tom Malloy's team. After what Tom went through, we did the mission statement exercise. My focus now was on the parents and the synergy that could come from them being on the same page as Tom. I went on the bench. Tom wanted me to come on the bench, and there's times I said no, I didn't. But I did go on the bench one time. And Rick, I want you to think about this. The role I played, and the only role I would want on a bench anymore, and I think knowledgeable head coaches should try it. In other words, Tom, if you're coaching the forwards, handle the forward door. Talk to the next people up and watch the game with them. That's what I did. One game for Tom because there was not enough parent coaches there that day, and I said, "Can I do that?" And other times I've been able to stand on the bench and talk to the coaches, not the kids. But the interaction I had with those kids in terms of what was happening on the ice, it was totally light bulb exchanges on shift length, tactics, puck possession, and they just got it. So I was really going to help a small group on the bench. And Tom, you can consider this next year. I would love, and I would love to be a doorman for some games. Not the trainer, not the spare goalie, but somebody who's just talking to the players about what's going on. Like, I didn't worry about what the coaches were saying or doing. And because what I discovered in that time was what I was saying to them face to face, because they were going out next and we were watching the game, influenced them more than I've ever influenced them standing on a bench. So that's something I want to, I would experiment with that in time. As a mentor role, that's sort of been the ultimate experience for me that I believe with those kids was valuable. And it doesn't have to be often at all. Once or twice a year is enough. One time with the D and one time with the forwards. And really, knowledgeable coaches like Tom, he's got his son on the bench with other assistants. He can do more, have more impact at the door with the group up on one side and at the door with the group up on another. And at our age, it really is going to be an important role and an important role. And would you consider that, Rick and Tom?
I do it all the time.
Do you do the door?
Yep. I prefer
Okay.
the door because when you stand back there, in
Yeah.
our room, most of the time, the penalty box is right in the middle.
Yeah,
So from the dot to the board, you can't even see the play.
yeah,
I prefer to stand at the door. And then when Cassie was there, I always, she said, well, I'll do the door. And I would always say, no, I'll do the door. And, I like the door because of just what I just said. Can see the play, and then I can just talk to the players when they come in. So,
now have you talked, like when you say the door, are you opening and closing the door?
yeah,
See, I found I can talk to them when they come in, but I found the only effective conversation I had was the ones that were watching with me and what was happening on the ice. When they come in, they went down and sat too far away from me to talk to them. So I found that next pair up's watching, and I'm learning from what I would like to tell those people that were on the ice. But that's something I've experienced that worked for me, because I had the feeling, gee, I sure love to talk to those people. And all I do, Tom, when they come off, if they've done something good, I'll point it out loudly so everybody hears on the defensive side, give them a pat on the back. And if there's a bit of a lull in the play and they've caught their wind, I might speak to them, but I'm only worrying about those 6D. At the door is a priority, 2D. So the one-on-one communication like we've got going here is what happens at the door. So
when Cassie and Jim are both there, and the two parents that opened the door there,
yeah,
this year, most of the time I stood on the boards between the D and the forwards.
yeah,
Could see the play, and I could talk to,
yeah,
if I wanted to talk to somebody, I was kind of close to both of them.
yeah.
You
Rick,
and
what do you
Victor,
think?
right, Tom? You and Victor ticking off.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried that?
Sitting behind you because the kids all stand up, eh?
Good point.
Yeah, they all stand up. The kids, it's a little bit different than higher levels where guys, they sit down.
That's why I have to stand on the bench, because I'm too short to see over anybody if I'm down at ice level. So
While coaching that SAID, I had a box so I could see over everybody's head, because now all the girls are just about as tall as I am, and they got skates on.
yeah,
I think Dave King had one at the Saddle Dome too, that he could stand on so he could see over the player's head.
So Rick, thinking of the teams you mentor, can you imagine yourself reaching the point where, like this is something I'm going to throw out with the coaches down the road. If somebody's not there and they need a door person, can I handle a door for you? But will they look at it as, oh, he's going to be the watching over me?
You have to be on the list so to be there.
What's that?
You have to be on the list to be on the box. You were on our list.
Yeah.
yeah. You can't just have anybody drop in on
Yeah,
a
but
moment's notice. You've got to be
on.
certified to be there.
And I was on the list with both Wes and Tom, and I couldn't do the door with the others, but it's something I would suggest. Wes's team, they were busy coaching, and they were learning as they coach. And anything I would have said or done on the bench was absolute interference. Now, I might have been able to help the players going out next, but that's all I would do as a mentor. What I did in Cochrane as a mentor on the bench, formally, we had 3 visits, Rick, and I don't know if you did one for us in Strathmore, but the first visit was a game, and they could choose 2 games and a practice, or 1 practice, 2 practices and a game. We were formally paid to mentor. And I went on the bench for the first period, and I kept track on a little on my pad, communication of the coaches. Was it positive, specific? Was it constructive feedback? And the next category, was it vocal, negative feedback? And they asked me what I was doing, and I told them before the game what I was going to do. I just wanted to keep track of how they communicated and let them know. They'll know the numbers after. So they became aware of their own communication. The second period, I videoed from the bench shifts, but more for the sake of their voices. Not a lot, just near the end of a shift, you could hear the coaches yelling and talking, and I videoed some of that to share with them after. Didn't talk to them about it, I just shared it with them after. And the third period, I just went in the stands, and after the game, we talked about everything we did and that kind of thing. It's sort of a nice academic process for me, but for them, it was an interfering process. They were caught up in the game, and it took them out of their comfort zone because a stranger was there that the board had sent down to interfere. And we didn't get the contract back doing that. And I lined up 10 highly qualified people to fulfill those roles in their own way. And I think the idea was great, but it just didn't quite stick. So, Rick, what are your thoughts on doing stuff like that? It's too much? Right stuff, wrong amount, wrong time?
Well, first of all, I haven't done it that way. Although I have been an observer at games and would like to have some situational input, if you will. I can see where that would be considered by a lot of people to be very distracting, based on the fact that they're reluctant to have a mentor there in the first place. But as you know, when you talk about distracting, it brought to mind watching games. I often wondered on TV with how the coaches dealt with things when they've got cameras in their face, literally from the sidelines all the time. And I had the fortune of coaching in the Saddle Dome at the Max a couple of times. And I realized very quickly that once the game starts, all that stuff is just in the background. And I would suspect for a lot of guys, if they would give it a chance, they'd find out that the mentor in the background would just be that. They can deal with him afterwards, or her, as the case may be, I suppose.
Yeah.
So there's that point of view. And you know, having had the other experience, I would consider that to be part of my thinking on it, that we'll deal with you while the game's not on. But once the game's on, if you're doing your job as a coach, you're pretty much focused on everything that matters and not the things that don't matter, or you should be at least.
Well, Rick, when many years ago I was taking the theory coaching program, which was all sports, individual, and it was better than the theory technical programs Hockey Canada offered. And I produced this activity, and I recommend it for really coaches who really want to improve. I recommend they record themselves on the bench or at a practice. A little portable recorder, and I've done this, and at the end of the practice or the game, they listen to it and they break it down. And I break it down into positive specific, which is great back check. Boy, that was a great shift. You came off enough, you're fresh. Nice pass, good support. Now there's positive general, which is good work, way to go, good jump. You know, there's millions of ways just to come across in an enthusiastic way. Now, constructive is telling them something in a way that isn't demeaning. And asking is better than telling, but it takes really patience and having time to do it. But then there's negative, specific, which is you've got to keep your stick on the ice. And the tone of voice comes across a little bit negative, but it's still constructive feedback. It's not negative. Constructive, specific, constructive, general. And negative feedback is when you yell, you scream, you swear, you're upset. And I'll give you an example. Watching a novice whole ice game, two competitive teams, and I wasn't recording, but I witnessed it. I'm doing both teams. I'm going from one bench to the other, to the other, to the other, and just doing what I said. And they were two of the top teams in the community and in the league. And the game got close. And their voices in the third period got changed. And one of the coaches screamed at the kid, novice, U9, "Are you brain dead?" And the mistake I made was bringing that up with him after. If I recorded it and he listened to it, when you hear yourself say something like that, that's where the recording, I suggest that to be certified as a high performance coach, you have to record yourself at a game or a practice and submit the breakdown. Nothing else. Nothing else. If you hear yourself, you're going to discover yourself and be aware of things that you weren't aware of. Now, I did this with the midget AAA team in Calgary, the head coach who could do this, record himself, no problem whatsoever. I didn't even have to do it for him. But he came up to me and he says he had a couple assistants. One of them was a yeller on the practice, and sometimes on the bench. He didn't come across, in a good way. And he wanted to know what to do. And I said, well, don't record yourself, but at practice, have a headset with a recorder so they know you're recording yourself. And when he was running practice, they asked him, what are you doing? Well, I'm just recording myself to hear the breakdown of what I'm saying and what we're saying. He didn't do it. And he said from that point on, for the next month, everything was perfect. He wasn't recording. He just put it on like he was. And they were thinking twice about what they were saying and doing because he told them it was for him. Then they started to do it again. So I told him, record yourself again. And that's one way he got through to them. Now, he already would pass the ethical coaching standard. But these are just ideas of how do we get coaches to be more self-aware so that they can change the way they do things, or we can hold each other accountable to doing things in a way we agree upon. And I think that's the essence of what I'm trying to do here. So I hope it makes sense, but it's keeping me busy, that's for sure. Tim, any thoughts on what I've talked about?
Well, going back to what Rick said, where you have to cultivate the relationship where there's trust and respect, and that can take time, or does take time. The other thing is, people can have either a closed mindset or an open mindset. If you can identify the people with the closed mindset, you might not want to waste much of your energy there. If there's patience is something that I have to work on. I think things should be done, right quick, and that's just not the way the world works, especially with relationships. So it can just take time. But I think if you're able to identify some staff that have an open mindset, that's really going to be very, very helpful to your effort.
I'm going to give you an example, all of you, of Jordan Fenton in the playoffs against Red Deer, and he lost to the Red Deer team. I thought this was the ultimate perspective piece that I'm going to face with girls hockey Calgary. Jordan won the provincials last year. Everything was just, I think he won 20 games in a row at one time and went 5-0 in the provincial championship. This year he got beat out in the playoffs by Red Deer. And Tim, this is interesting because Red Deer played a really aggressive game. They iced the puck, rimmed it when they were under pressure, and they could change, and they forechecked like hell. In other words, they played old school hockey, dump it out, dump it in, work like hell. And he said something to me as he played. He wanted to break out under control. He wanted to enter and possess. So he didn't jump and chase, and he didn't off the glass it. And he told me, he said, I could have and I might have won, but you're not developing the players. You're coaching to win. And that's what concerns him, is that if you're coaching to win, dump it out, dump it in at Pee Wee, well, the best players are going to carry it the length of the ice, not pass. Everybody else is going to run around. So Jordan's philosophies, to me, is the consummate coach. Like that, he could have coached more differently. Now, at a negative level, not for Jordan, but other coaches, what happens is they absolutely shorten the bench. That's all. And that's what we're trying to prevent, is give every kid an opportunity to develop, at least in the first half of the year, play all roles, and play all roles when you've got a lead and the game's in control. But just don't isolate those chosen few and try to win. So that's sort of the essence of this position I'm going to go into, to introduce this philosophy, which to me is the right philosophy. So anyway, it's something Tom does. Rick, I think you got the most out of everybody. They earned their roles, and nobody felt dejected or isolated. They had roles that were suited to them over the way they evolved, and those roles changed during the game, midstream, I believe. Is that correct, Rick? Your speaker, Rick. Your speaker.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was going to say I agree with that, Wally. As the game progresses, the contributions level change, or the effectiveness changes, and as a coach, you adjust to that. You put the proper players in the situations that are going to give them the most success, which ultimately gives the group the most success.
What do you do when you're mentoring? And I'll go to U15 AAA because these are more knowledgeable coaches, but they don't see the game that way. They're not able to manage. They shorten the bench. to try to win, rather than manage the bench to develop and educate to win.
Well, I can't speak to that because I haven't mentored anybody at that level.
Yeah.
But were I given the opportunity to do that, I would stick with my theory and my processes. That if you want your team to improve, you have to help your individuals improve and understand the game better and how they fit into it,
Yeah.
where they're best suited to fit into it. If
Yeah.
you want long-term result, that's what you have to do. You can get short-term result, but it's going to be short-term and it's not going to get you to the holy grail that you're after in
Yeah.
all likelihood. And you're not going to help your group moving forward.
Well, Mike,
You have to preach that. You have to preach that whole theory, Wally. And again, going back into what you're contemplating, if you're not going to start that process with Girls Hockey Calgary, who is? So
we've lost. Okay.
Did you catch that or?
Yeah, we got her now.
Okay. I was just saying that with Girls Hockey Calgary offer that you have, if you're not going to do that and start that process or make a good, strong attempt at it, who else is going to do it?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's, to me, that would be an incentive.
Mike, I want to welcome you. We've been talking about mentorship, and I think that's what you do. You're trying to influence and mentor. And yesterday I was offered a position to do it formally, and I'm reluctant because as soon as you're paid for something like that, there's expectations. And if the expectations are outcome oriented, then what you're doing as a mentor is a little more difficult if their expectations are. And so I don't know what I'm going to do in this role, but it's really interesting because it's going to be everything I've always done, but I've only done it with the U13 level with Tom's team and one other team. And now they want to do it they're expanding to 3 teams, but they also want me to do the same thing with the 3 U15 elite teams. So I'm going to be experimenting with that. And when you came on, Rick and I were talking about the biggest dilemma is really shortening the bench to try to win and not developing people. And part of that is, we think part of that is we just don't want them yelling and abusing people. But I find that shortening the bench is abuse. And when it occurs to the degree that it occurs, in a way, it just turns kids off. Parents don't say anything because the so-called ones that want to win all the time think this is the way you coach, and it trickles down from the NHL and pro hockey. But we're in the development business, so I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Rick. First, can you speak to what you're trying to influence as a mentor and what I brought up in terms of
Mike.
Mike? Okay, Mike?
I was going to chime in anyway, but yeah, no. So it's funny. I mean, so I would say that that's kind of a position I'm in. I guess mentorship is kind of goes out the window with me a little bit because I am paid, to work with these organizations. So, when I came up as kind of architect role, it wasn't. I wanted to be very clear that I wasn't mentoring the coaches and the programs as much as I'm giving my opinion and guidance as to, the different options they might have, and then it's their choice, right? I mean, it's funny that I run into this in my own. So when you're an outsider, you get to obviously throw a lot of grenades in there, right? And then you kind of step back and say, okay, well, I hope you guys can clean it up. And that's kind of what I experienced the most in the youth hockey world, because these organizations and the people that are in these organizations they're much more intertwined in the culture and the community, and they're mostly moms and dads, and like they have to be able to live within that organization, where somebody like me kind of can come in. I don't live in that organization. Like I'm experiencing right now. I run a youth lacrosse program in my town. And when I say I run it because it's the same as most of the hockey programs I work with. You know, the 3 or 4 board members that want to be involved don't really do anything. They have a lot of meetings, but nothing gets done. But when I bring in like best practices or what we could be doing and how we should be developing and looking at the long-term processes that we have, and how do we get more kids playing at every level, so that when it comes time where they have to make decisions on who should play, who shouldn't play, discipline, development, all that kind of stuff, we have enough kids in the pool to help make that happen. And I think we get. I mean, I obviously I like, what this group talks about a lot, and that's this fair and equal, playing time and not shortening the bench. But I think a lot of the reasons that happens, Wally, that I see, not, in real life, is that the programs don't develop the structure and expectations around what that means. Like it doesn't, like my kid doesn't get equal ice time and equal playing time when they don't show up and put the work in. Like, just because you're on a team doesn't mean that you get equal time if you're not putting the work in. And I think what's happening now with our youth hockey culture is, because kids come in for 5 or 6 months, they just expect, okay, I'm on this team, I'm playing all the time. And nobody develops. There's no, Rick, I think you were hitting on it a little bit when I first popped on, but there's no, like, nobody thinks they have a role. Like, nobody understands how a team is built. Like, they don't understand that there are certain players I'm putting on a team because you play this role for my team. You're not all equal, nor should you be. But I do agree at the youth level. I mean, we should and allow all the players to have the opportunity to develop roles. But I think what we're missing right now is that not nobody. Many of the people we're working with don't accept a role, and frankly, and the coaches and the organizers don't articulate and present what roles there are on a team or in an organization. So I definitely experience it every day. I mean, like I said, it's easy for me to tell a couple of coaches, hey, I think you should do this. I think you should do that. This would be great. We should be doing this with the programs. But it's hard to implement it because they're the ones that have the boots on the ground. They're the ones that have to actually make those decisions and look people in the eye.
Rick, I wanted to get you to talk to Mike and share your thoughts on coaches can manage the bench, but they don't. They shorten it. There's a difference between managing the bench to build a team and build confidence, transfer belief, and develop, and still win. And coaches don't have the experience. So what they do is just put out their perceived best players. So Rick, can you talk about the art of making everybody feel valued and developing them? And sometimes some are in, some are out. They've earned their roles, and they may have an off day, but coaches can't do that. We can. So Rick, would you talk to that again? Okay.
I'm not sure what you're looking for, Wally, but the first thought that comes to mind is that number one, you have to talk to your group. You have to, right from the get-go, at the start of camp or at the time of final team selection, you let everybody know how you're going to proceed for the season. That it's an open discussion. We will put people, give them equal opportunity, let's put it that way, to play in all situations and to take the lessons that are being taught and execute and perform and earn their spot. And I usually did that up till Christmas time, the way it worked out in our situations. And after that, it was on full notice that in certain situations, other people would be called upon. depending on what the game situation dictated. And you know, so there you're going, like, who's going to be first power play, who's going to be first PK, and quite frankly didn't really exercise that 100% of the time. It again depended on the game situation. If you were up a lot or down a lot and it didn't really matter, just let them play. But an important thing that I felt that we did was when a player was guilty of committing an on-ice error, you know, a lot of guys just won't put them back out in that situation. Late game situations, he can't be on the ice in a 1-goal game and so on. Our approach has always been, or at least evolved to become the way we do our business, is we'll put him back out there. We'll deal with it in practice. We'll talk about it, and we'll put him back out there and let him see if he's learned anything. If he did, great. If he didn't, then we've still got work to do. And I've been in many occasions criticized for that. Why would you have that guy out there, or that girl, as the case may be? How am I going to find out if he's learned the lesson or not? You have to give them the experience. And once they do, that's confidence builder. That's confidence for them. It's confidence for you as a coach. So now you have one more tool in the box that you can use. And again, you know, the talking, if we're going into a game situation, provincial final, let's say, we'll have that discussion one more time with the players. This is what we've talked about. And you're all equally important, but you cannot all equally contribute. So if the game situation dictates that, we're going to deal with it. And at the end of the game, if someone has been short shift, I'm in the hallway. I don't leave the building till we've had that one last conversation.
Yeah.
Hopefully you understand what went on there. And if they do, great. And if you've had that dialogue all year long, it has always gone well, in my experience. They don't have to like it, but they understand it and they can accept it more readily.
Mike, I just want to relate my experience with coaching. It was high school football. I took on a team because I took a university class in 12-man football, and I played 6-man in Saskatchewan and volunteered to coach a team because there was nobody else would do it in a high school. And I played everybody. And there were 47 players. And there was a coach that one of the coaches of the senior team, he had a red team. They played both ways. He had a white team that could play sometimes on offense, sometimes on defense. And he had the blue team, which didn't play. And usually they were your first-year players. And I worked with him for 1 year. And the guy was a very small, aggressive young man who played in the Sugar Bowl in football. And he kicked a kid at practice, and I walked away. I quit coaching with him because he was too competitive for me. But I rolled everybody, never won a game that year. It was the best year coaching I had because we went from like 47-0 to being up 15-7 in the 7th game against the best team and lost our 7th game. But it was the most satisfying game for me because nobody quit. And I admitted I didn't know what I was doing after the first loss to the kids, and they were going to learn, and so was I. And then I got to coach the senior team, won 3 city championships with that philosophy. 12 offensive players, 12 defensive players, and there were backups that got in all the time, not, regularly. And we got to one playoff in the 4th season. In the city finals, I decided to go 2 ways with my best athletes, my halfback and my fullback. So 2 defensive players didn't get to play we lost. I learned a lesson that day. We'd won the other way, and here I sort of succumbed to the score clock and the idea they could do it. So since that day, I've always had that philosophy, and I've carried it to the extreme where I don't do what Rick's does. The nuances of, hey, this guy's going. This is a good matchup. Here's somebody put out now, and I found in one junior A game, we won the provincial championship that year here in Alberta. But leading up to it, I had 6D, but I played 5. We won the game, and I called the defenseman that didn't play into the room and said to him, look, I don't know why you didn't play, but I know that we were going with 5. They got into the game, and I just stuck with it. I want you to know that you'll play next game. But he was so appreciative of being talked to. And I noticed him in the room when the whole team was celebrating the win. He was in the corner with his head down. So I had the trainer bring him in to have the conversation. So those conversations, Rick, for you and the kid at that level were huge. And in minor hockey, they've got to sort of be confident enough and trust you and respect you enough to share the story and the explanation with the parents and accept it. But it's the art of coaching and competitive hockey. So I'm really looking forward to next year. And my experiment, Mike, Peter Whitney was on, and Hal Terse about mentorship. Peter's doing the same thing in the association. He's going to do the mission statement exercise with the coaches and then with the parents separately. And that's what I'm going to do with the girls hockey Calgary. And my plan is to sit in the stands with the parents during games. Once they've written their mission statement exercise and put it on the fridge, I should be comfortable to sit with them, talk to them, and talk to the coaches. And I'm not even going to mentor X's and O's. If they want ideas, I'll wait for them to come to me. Right now, I just want to make sure the developing people, give them ideas about how they can develop them better. And if they open up more and want more, they can ask for more. But right now, my only focus with 6 teams is doing it, this exercise with the coaches, with the players, or with the parents, not even with the players. The coach can do it with the players if he chooses, but I'm just going to go to games occasionally. And when I do, I'm going to sit with the parents, mingle with them, talk to them during games, before and after, and just be that conduit of what we're doing and the way we're doing it. So, Rick, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to clarify, just in case there's a misunderstanding on my earlier comments, that the idea of over managing the bench, let's put it that way, didn't happen all that frequently, but it was out there that everyone understood what may or may not happen. Quite frankly, in most cases, because of the process, we were well in control of situations game-wise. So it wasn't that frequently that we had to do it. It wasn't an every game situation. Most games were run on a rotation basis, more or less. But it's in the environment. It's part of the learning. If the kids want to move on with their hockey, they have to learn that this is going to be part and parcel of what they're dealing with. To me, it's part of the development, the growth, and the understanding of what they're getting themselves into. And again, I'm speaking there more of AA, AAA, elite hockey, if you will. At the minor hockey level, that applies that much less. But still, I think there's a life lesson to be learned there, that we're all not capable of doing everything. We need to know what our roles are, what our capabilities are, and be the best we can be in those situations.
See, Rick, I when you say minor hockey, I call that anything under junior,
Yeah, I
U20.
realize that, Wally.
And so the developmental side of making sure they play and they develop and getting ice time, extra ice time for the right reasons, and taking it away for the right reasons, behavioral reasons, like the behavior of. I watched the AAA midget final in Calgary, and in the third period, both teams shortened their bench. The fourth line didn't play. In the double overtime, the top two lines played all of both double overtimes. Had one of the teams used their third and fourth lines selectively, they would have had energy to play at a higher level. But fortunately, what's happened now with the best teams in this league playing in the final, they both shortened the bench, so it didn't make any difference. The same best kids that you could see, yeah, they're going to be junior players going out, and they're going to go up in junior, and they're not going to get to dress games. They're going to be given 6 minutes of ice time. They've got to adapt. So I think they're being overplayed to the detriment of their lifelong careers. So, Rick?
Just you talking about the midget final, it reminded me of two MAC semifinal games that we won in overtime, and in both winning goals were scored by what would be considered our fourth line at the time.
Yeah. Well, I'll share Jordan's story of the final game against Red Deer when he won the provincial championship last year. He basically rolled the lines. He managed the bench. Everybody played. The other team, they were into a two-line philosophy, and it caught up with them. And I think the score was tied after the second. And Jordan went into the room and said, "Girls, everything's good. They're going to be exhausted, and we've got energy." And he ended up winning that final game. That's the bottom line: is when you overplay people, they stay out too long, they're not really playing hockey. It's shinny, might be advanced shinny, but the shift length is going to weigh on them. The lactic acid builds up and they can't play, they can't perform. So shift length, it's a part of the value of respecting the team and yourself and knowing you need to recover to be your best in the next shift. And I've seen it happen at U13 hockey where they overplayed the best players at so many levels. They don't realize, yeah, they might win, but that's not the way to run an organization and to treat kids. And I think parents know that. 90% of the parents know that. So, well, I don't know if anybody's got anything else to add, but Rick, when I got up and left you, I had the speaker turned on here, and I checked on the score, and Carla McLeod, Team Czechia, is up 2-1 on Finland, and there was 10 minutes left in the period. So Sammy Joe has sent me some text messages during the game, and she's broadcasting there. So next week, we're going to have Courtney Burchard on. I think she's coaching at Princeton University, but she's coached the U18 national team a number of times, assisted with the senior team. And she's going to be on next week. Tim Bothwell's sort of going to run that program. But the story that I wanted to share about Courtney is back in her era of play, she was a defenseman with size and skill. And I thought she should have made the national team, but her stick, she couldn't control the puck at the tempo against the US. Again, in her club team at University of Toronto and playing at the U18 level, wasn't a problem, but at the senior level, only when you play the US could you see that pressure and the turning over of the puck or the inability to play with speed. And I edited a video of her shifts in one game, and I highlighted another player who managed the puck well. And I'm not sure that the stick was overly long, but it appeared I could see the chicken wing of the arm, elbow at the side, and I thought it prevented her. Tim Bothwell thought she should have been a forward, and I think he might have been right. She had a chance at forward, but either way, with a proper length stick, she'd have been a national team player as a forward or a D. But she's going to come on, and Tim's going to lead her, guide her, and we've got some coaches from the States that are coaching college hockey that wanted to get on this session. Tom, Norton sent me an email. I sent him the link.
Yeah.
He tried to get on, but for some reason he couldn't. So I don't know if you can get his phone number or not, but I'm going to email him and ask for his number and Skype with him privately so he can join us in the future. So.
Yeah, what you do is better. If you're
Okay.
sending stuff, it's better that you do it.
Okay, we'll look after it. But look, everybody, I'm going to have to head out here. I've got some stuff I have to attend to. Al Andrews is leaving tomorrow, so I'm going to get a hold of him and say so long to him. And Rick, your hand's up again.
Just wondering, last week, did you want to get together tomorrow, Wally, or?
I'll tell you what happened, Rick. I got an appointment at 8 a.m. with my cat to get declawed and hairstyled, set up by my daughter.
Okay,
So-
no problem.
I'm just checking because I might be happy to do it later, but I want to just check on that exact time on Friday.
Has your cat got a big date or something or what?
Yeah, 9 o'clock. Well, it's my lifetime companion. When I had the heart attack, my daughter bought the cat, an expensive, beautiful cat. My blood pressure came down and I recovered much faster, and it's still with me. So, yeah, it's 9 o'clock. I don't know if you want to meet for lunch after that, but I'd be happy to do that. And maybe Tom could join us. Friday,
I'm supposed to
Tom,
play
lunch.
hockey tomorrow at noon.
Okay, where?
Let's do it another Friday, Wally.
Okay, we'll set it up then.
Simplifies things.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Thanks for reminding me of that, Rick. I was gonna call you and talk to you about it. So,
Yep.
Okay, everybody, I gotta head out here, so I'm gonna turn the stop record